a full-scale offensive, and a warning that American forces could pay the price. That is the warning now coming from Mohsen Rezaei, an advisor to Iran's supreme leader and former commander of the Revolutionary Guard Corps, who says the United States could face a massive Iranian response in the coming days if its bombing campaign continues through the weekend. And the warning did not come from just any officer. Speaking to Iranian state television, he declared that if the Americans continue the war in the next 2 or 3 days, Iran will enter what he called full-scale offensive operations, and he defined exactly what that means. Tehran would no longer settle for mere retaliation, and Iran would no longer present its response as limited to one battlefield or one border. The threat lands after Reuters reported 7 consecutive nights of American airstrikes, with CENTCOM saying the latest wave hit surveillance, logistics, weapons storage, and maritime capabilities. Over the past week, the United States has expanded its campaign from military facilities to the critical infrastructure supporting Iran's operations in the south. Those are precisely the assets tied to Iran's coastline and its ability to contest the Strait of Hormuz. And now, voices inside Iran are warning that this may not be the endgame at all. Iranian hardliners are now treating it like possible groundwork. Following the latest strikes on the southern provinces, Iranian parliamentarian Amir Hossein Sabeti claimed the bombardment is a prelude to a U.S. invasion of Iran's strategically important southern islands. Sabeti argues Washington is targeting transport networks and communication infrastructure to isolate those areas before any attempt to seize them through amphibious landings or helicopter-borne assaults. Once those defenses are degraded, he argues, it becomes far easier for U.S. forces to operate on the ground, and he warned that any American ground invasion would come at an enormous cost, claiming U.S. forces would suffer heavy casualties if they tried. The speculation intensified after reports that President Donald Trump convened a Situation Room meeting to discuss expanding military operations. According to Axios, those discussions extended far beyond the current air campaign, and Trump has left the option of taking Iranian territory open, while Reuters says U.S. officials view the strikes as expanding the military options available to him. But why would Iran's southern islands matter that much? Because analysts argue that durable control of Hormuz is extremely difficult without neutralizing the island positions that overlook it. Those islands provide the surveillance, the missile coverage, and the naval access that are central to Iran's ability to challenge shipping through the Gulf. Which is why some Iranian officials believe the current bombing campaign is not simply about destroying military assets. In their reading, it is about shaping the battlefield before a potential ground assault. There is no official confirmation from Washington that any ground invasion has been approved or is imminent. But inside Iran, the possibility of American boots on the ground is no longer being dismissed. Rezaei suggested the diplomatic track had collapsed, while Iranian reporting described the memorandum as effectively suspended. He accused Washington of violating it by failing to ensure an Israeli withdrawal from southern Lebanon, backing what Tehran calls an illegal alternative shipping route in Hormuz, striking Iranian territory, and failing, according to Tehran, to release Iranian assets promised under the understanding. His central accusation is that Washington pursued war and negotiations at the same time. After the Islamabad talks, he claimed Iran accepted a 2-week ceasefire, only for the United States to use that window to strengthen its naval blockade while talks were still underway, and he was specific about what comes next. From now on, Rezaei warned, Iran would frame American soldiers and American bases as targets of offensive action, and the Americans should expect waves of drones and waves of missiles, no longer just 1, 2, or 3. Then, Rezaei turned to America's Arab allies, and the message was aimed past their governments. He warned that no borders in the region would be safe if the conflict keeps escalating, while insisting Iran would respect all governments and calling the region's nations brothers. And he appealed directly to the people of Kuwait, of Jordan, of Abu Dhabi, of Qatar, urging them to stop this war from igniting, and not to let Washington and Israel act across the region without calculation. He also made a far broader, speculative prediction that a wider global conflict could erupt, even invoking Taiwan and Europe, without evidence that either front is moving that way. This is not the first time Rezaei has escalated the rhetoric. Days earlier, He described the Strait of Hormuz as more important than dozens of atomic bombs, calling the waterway one of Iran's most powerful deterrents against the United States, and vowing Tehran would keep defending it after Iranian officials declared the shipping lane closed or restricted until Washington changes course. And on the raw numbers, the claim is not hard to understand. The strait links the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman and the Arabian Sea, and carries around a fifth of the world's seaborne oil shipments.
Negotiations and the war have ended. If the Americans continue the war in the next 2 or 3 days, we will enter a phase of full-scale offensive and destruction. What does that mean? Meaning we will no longer just settle for retaliation. No political borders are safe anymore against Iran's offensive forces. Of course, we will respect all governments. All nations are our brothers. But from now on, we will pursue American soldiers with offensive action. We will pursue American bases with offensive action. Both negotiation and war are over. It is over and done with. Therefore, it is better that they do not continue. The reason we are cautious about this is that if we enter this phase, the challenges and rifts that exist in the region and at the international level will be activated. Meaning challenges will arise between Turkey and Israel. Even between Saudi Arabia and some other countries, challenges will arise. There will be conflict between China and Taiwan, and conflict will arise between Russia and Europe. In fact, the flames that will ignite across the entire world, it will become more intense and widespread. And we do not want this, we do not want this. But the Americans, just as they regionalized the war and forced us into a regional war, are unfortunately making a mistake. This is another miscalculation that the Americans are in fact making. Therefore, I ask all the people of the region, the people of Kuwait, the dear people of Jordan, which has been the path of divine prophets, the people of Abu Dhabi, the people of Qatar, and everyone to prevent this war from igniting. Stop the war from igniting. Do not let the Americans and Israel run wild like this, and do not let them gallop their horses across the region without any thought or calculation. In any case, the issue of war is serious, but that American policy, which thinks that through more negotiations and more war, they can prolong this, in my opinion, will lead them nowhere. Of course, even at this stage, which is a stage of retaliation and deterrence, we are striking hard, and in the coming days, we will increase that intensity even further. The Americans should expect waves of drones. America should expect waves of missiles. There will no longer be just 1, 2, or 3 missiles. And if you were to land somewhere, let's assume you managed to, how would you get out? How would you even escape?
Any disruption there can shake global energy markets within hours. So where does this leave the region? Rezaei's remarks rank among the strongest warnings issued by a senior Iranian official since this escalation began, and they come with a deadline attached: 2 or 3 days. But notice what he is actually describing, because it is not a threat delivered from a position of comfort. It is a warning that the flames, in his words, would spread across the entire world, and that Iran does not want it. Washington, for its part, has confirmed no invasion, approved no landing, and publicly announced no operation. Yet its aircraft have struck Iran's coastline for 7 straight nights, hitting systems that U.S. officials and analysts say could matter if more complex operations were ever ordered. Whether this remains psychological warfare or becomes a real operation may decide the next and most dangerous chapter of this conflict. The coming days will show whether the region steps back from the brink or plunges past it. The world is watching, and so far, neither side is blinking.